Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, guys. Justin here as always. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out with me today to talk about Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Man, R.I.P. Paul Reubens. What a legend, man. What a legend. It was an amazing time to grow up in the 80s and 90s where Paul Reubens and Pee-wee was everywhere. You could not escape Pee-wee freaking Herman. Back in the day, me and my sister would get up every Saturday and we'd watch Pee-wee and we'd watch our old VHS tapes. I remember we had a recorded episode, I think it was the Christmas holiday special that we used to watch all the time on VHS. I have my Pee-wee's Playhouse VHS tape box set right here. But in the 80s and 90s, Pee-wee was a really big deal, and he was a really positive role model. It was kind of strange, but at the same time really quirky and sweet. All of the ultimate messages of the TV shows and even the movies. The movies were a little quirkier, but when it came to the TV show, it was just such a positive show that always tried to teach kids to do the right thing and to try to be educational, and it was also just fun. The show was so innovative and so strange with all of these odd characters that just appealed to my sensibilities as a kid. If you hear me on podcasts or when I talk about my studio space here, I call this the Playhouse, especially when I had all my animatronics and it was a bit more crazier. I kind of modeled it after Pee-wee's Playhouse because that house was so cool. And so is the house in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this movie. I just kind of want to give my thoughts on it, my experiences with it, talk a little bit about it. And if you haven't seen it, this is just a high recommendation to watch this movie. If you've never seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure, there's not a better time to check it out now, to pay your respects to Mr. Paul Reubens and just check out what is quite an amazing film. It's so innovative and weird and quirky. It was Tim Burton's directorial debut. Paul Reubens came up with the character of Pee-wee way back in the day in the 70s, in the Groundlings, in the improvisational sketch group, and he sort of developed it on stage and eventually wrote a script and linked up with Tim Burton, and we got this amazing film. I think the budget for this thing was like $6 million. It went on to gross like $30 or $40 million. It was a huge success, and what was unique about this show and what was unique about the movie is that it kind of played on a couple different levels. It was good for kids, but in this movie, more so than the show, appealed to adults as well because it is so strange and quirky. This movie is so many things. It's a road movie that's a good vehicle for Pee-wee to just go on all these crazy adventures and go on all these different locations. We start at the beginning of the movie where we see not quite the playhouse that we had in the TV show, but you see a version of this quirky house. I always just thought this house was so cool. He slides down the pole to get downstairs, and his dog Speck has the really cool dog house with the neon lights. He eats the Mr. T cereal. He's got the giant spoon. The whole Rube Goldberg thing at the beginning of the movie was so creative. I always loved his house. And then at the beginning of the movie, you reveal his bike, the catalyst for this whole crazy journey that he gets on when he gets his beloved bike stolen, and that sets him on a journey to discover his bike. And he goes on all these wild adventures and meets different people. I always had the biggest crush on Dottie, who just loved him so much, but he wouldn't give her the time of day.
I'm a loner, Dottie. A rebel.
He's such a quirky character because at the same time he has this childlike energy. He can be kind of prickly. He can be kind of a dick. And I think that's what made his character unique and sort of dynamic. And you have all this incredible production design. You have very early Tim Burton. This is a very early Tim Burton movie, so it doesn't quite have that signature style of Tim Burton, but you can see the kernels of it. You can see the development of it. Some parts are a little bit scary. The large Marge scene always terrified me as a kid with that super creative claymation face that's just so cool. Tell him large Marge sent ya. Then you have the character of Francis, who's also another man-child, this giant baby character that's such a villain. Every scene is a standout. You can't go 5 minutes without something iconic happening, whether it's him falling off the bike saying, "I meant to do that," or he's up in the big dinosaur, or that crazy animated sequence where you can just see his eyes, or him dressing up as that criminal's wife in the car. Every moment of this movie is just so funny. He starts his journey at his little quirky house, and it ends up all the way going first full circle where he gets his bike back after going to Texas and having all these strange dream sequences with weird clowns. But in the end, Pee-wee gets his bike, and it's a happy ending for everyone. I always remember one of the lines I always quoted the most was towards the end of the movie when they're watching the movie and Paul Reubens has his cameo and he's like, Mr. Herman, paging Mr. Herman,
you have a telephone call.
I still do that shit to this day. There's so many lines out of this movie that I quote, and it was cool that he was able to do a second one and go on to have a pretty decent career. In my opinion, it's not the career that I feel like he could have done more. I feel like he had some dramatic chops that he got to do every once in a while, but he never really got to shine as the character actor that I think he could have been. But we'll always have Pee-wee. This movie is so incredible. It's so funny. It's timeless. I think if you have not seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure, just watch it because it is such a classic. It even works for adults. If you didn't watch it, you didn't grow up with it, you can still enjoy this thing as an adult, and it almost works maybe even more as an adult because the themes are so kind of blur the lines between what a kid's movie can be and an adult movie can be, as a lot of those 80s and 90s movie were. They kind of blurred the line where they're not going to offend kids, they're not going to be too much for kids, but they're just riding that line to where some things will go over kids' heads, but for adults, it's just perfect for adults and big kids like myself. And that's really all I have to say. I just got done watching this movie and I took a couple notes, so I just wanted to kind of wing it and just sort of go off the top of the head and just talk about my experiences and feelings with this movie and Paul Reubens and just sort of wax nostalgic about the era of Pee-wee and sort of pay my tribute. So R.I.P. Mr. Paul Reubens, you will be missed, man. Hope he's in the big playhouse in the sky and he's just having a good time, man. R.I.P. my dude. So let me know your thoughts on any Paul Reubens movies that you love. What are your experiences with Pee-wee's Big Adventure? Did you love this movie? Did you grow up with it? What are your thoughts on Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Paul Reubens himself? But guys, I think we're done here. Stay weird. Remember to always be yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.